welcome all. Before he moved to the United States sometime in the last century from his beloved Ireland, one of his work colleagues told Conor that he probably joined some weird cult. Conor joined Toastmasters and he got hooked. One of less than 90 accredited speakers in the history of Toastmasters, this man really believes in the benefits of Toastmasters. He works diligently to improve his skill set, which is why he's currently close to finishing his second DTM, which his wife says stands for Delirious Toastmaster. Conor's mission as a keynote speaker is to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. So sit up straight, pick that piece of broccoli out of your teeth, get out your iPad, your iPhone, smartphone, tablet, or wait, what do they call those things? Oh yes, pen and paper, and start taking notes as Conor Cunneen talks to us on adding humor to your presentation. Conor.
Thank you, Marilyn. Well, isn't it amazing what you find when you're out walking the land? A camera right here in front of me. It's unbelievable. Does it work? It does. Let's see. Crikey, it does. Hey, Toasties, District 3, Conor Cunneen, Irishman speaks here, and delighted to be presenting to your presentation, to your meeting today. The concept is we'll be adding humor to your presentation. Now, one of the things that probably has impacted everyone in the last 12 months, I'm also going to be addressing, and that is something that everyone probably on this video conference is aware of, and it is something that I refer to as numb butt-itis. Sorry, it's upside down. Would you look at that? Okay, this printer always prints upside down, no matter what I do, gang. The whole world has got numb butt-itis. It's more draining than any bronchitis. But maybe the next time you Zoom, just stand in the room. Don't let it come back and bite us. So a simple little trick for you as Toastmasters going forward is sometimes when you're on these Zoom calls, maybe just stand in the room and it will make a difference to your level of attention and energy. Enough of the serious stuff, my people. We now go to what I would refer to as a public service announcement. And that public service announcement relates to the fact that in this program, I will provide you with some tips, tricks, and techniques that will help you to add humor to your presentation. But the danger is, though, that if you implement too many of these or hear too many of them during a meeting or during a speech, it may cause convulsive laughter that may actually require a defibrillator. So that's the public service announcement I wish to leave you with this evening. Now, laughter and the brain. So we're now going to do a 75-minute presentation on how the brain is impacted by laughter. And we'll be talking about the ventromedial prefrontal cortex. We'll be talking about the orbitofrontal prefrontal cortex. And we'll be talking about, no, they won't go for that? Okay, all right. Let's go to something else so then. What I want to talk to you about is how laughter actually does impact us. And many scientists and neuroscientists will tell you that when we laugh, endorphins start swimming around in our brain. And endorphins are known as the feel-good chemical. And when those neurotransmitters get activated, we feel better about ourselves. So that's their theory, that the endorphins start swimming around in the brain. Toastmasters have a different view. The research I have done is that it is not endorphins that swim around in the brain, not endorphins that swim around in the brain. It is actually endorphins. Okay? And here's my theory on this. When was the last time that you smiled when you saw an endorphin? Probably never. When was the last time you smiled when you saw a dolphin? Okay, all of the time nearly. So the basic theory here is that the endorphins are swimming around in your brain rather than endorphins. Now, that obviously is a little bit goofball, but just wanted to do a play on words. And that is something that you can often do in humor. We'll give you a few other examples as we go along, but it does often become an interesting little way to add humor to your presentation by either misquoting a word, misinterpreting a word, or just putting it in a different kind of a context. So that's one simple little trick that you might be able to pay attention to add humor to your presentation. Now, I'm going to put a question to you just to get you thinking for a second. And maybe you can go on unmute when you're answering this. And the fastest way to do that is just if you hit the space bar, that will unmute you. So what I'm looking for, Toasties, is one word. And it's got 5 letters. And the word relates to, if I say something that I hope is humorous or funny, what is it that I expect you to do?
Laugh.
Anyone?
Laugh.
Laugh.
Okay, who said groan? Okay, all right. So laugh. Okay, why do I ask that question? The reason why I'm asking that question is that I'm going to provide you with a number of different tips, tricks, and techniques today. So you mentioned the laugh, which is a L-A-F-F. Oh no, L-A-U-G-H. Sorry, L-A-U-G-H. 5-letter word. Okay, I was confused there for a second. Now, basic idea here is that I want to provide you with tips, tricks, and techniques that will help to add humor to your presentation. Tips, tricks, and techniques that will get other people laugh. Okay? Now, guess what, gang? I'm providing you with an acronym that spells out 5 tips, tricks, and techniques that you can use that amazingly spells laugh. The acronym LAUGH will help you and your colleagues to laugh more. It will help you to win that next humorous speech competition. Well, it'll go a long way towards doing it anyway. I mean, if you get the right judges, and if you're in Chicago, you'd use brown envelopes and, well, not really in Toastmasters, but in politics, you might do that all right. But the acronym is LAUGH. Now, what do I mean by laugh and the lessons? First element of adding humor to your presentation in the LAUGH acronym is listen. And by that, I mean that I'm not going to suggest to you at all this evening that you need to create your own humor. What I'm suggesting to you is that you can capture the humor that is around you. When you listen to something that is funny, pay attention to it, write it down, record it, or make sure you've got some way of remembering it. And if you look at it this way, psychologists, scientists will tell you that a baby laughs maybe 350 to 400 times a day. The average adult apparently laughs about 15 times a day. Now that means that if you haven't laughed at all yet today, you're going to laugh 15 times in the next hour. Or the converse is, if they have laughed 15 times, they won't laugh now. All right, that's not a good idea. Okay, but the basic idea here, gang, is the average adult laughs about 15 times a day. And you might be surprised and say, I don't remember laughing today. I don't remember smiling. But I bet any money, if you start paying attention to when you smile, when you laugh, when you hear something that actually put a smile in your face, you will actually find over a period of time that you're actually taking a record of quite a few different things. And if you start recording and listening to what made you laugh today, what makes you laugh tomorrow, and the day after a period of time, you're going to have quite a repository of humorous material. Now, you may not know when you're going to use it, but you're going to have the repository of humorous material. So tomorrow, if you see a humorous cartoon, save it. If you get a humorous email from someone, save it. If you hear a humorous comment from someone, write it down. And the funny thing, gang, is, will I ask a question here? Again, you can hit the space bar, we'll get the response. Do you think when you're in a group of friends and you have a good conversation and you're laughing, do you think you laugh more at comments and quips and stories, or do you laugh more at jokes in that relationship, in that conversation. Anyone want to shout out?
Stories.
Stories, yeah. That's the thing, gang. We don't laugh a lot at many jokes because we don't actually hear that many jokes within our whole universe. But what we do is we hear stories, quips, anecdotes. And what I'm encouraging you to do is to listen to those, pay attention to them, and you will actually develop a good repository of information. The second element of the LAUGH acronym is coming up now, and the letter A does stand for anecdote, which effectively is what was commented there a moment ago. Each of us has stories in life that when we tell people, people laugh at them. Each of us has stories in life that at some stage we were uncomfortable when they happened. And if you can combine an uncomfortable story that occurred to you a few years back that really has had no negative impact on your life or on your experience, you have got the jewels for a wonderful humorous story. I mean, a simple little example might be, I'll show you an example of this in a few minutes' time, but an example for you might be if you think back on your, let's say, high school days. And for the ladies here in the room, if you think about the jerk that broke your heart, okay? Now, when you think about it, at that time, it was really sad and it was uncomfortable. But now, when you're telling your friends about that jerk that broke your heart, you're probably laughing at it and your friends are laughing at the story as well. It is an uncomfortable situation separated by time that will help you to create a good humorous stories. And for the men who are kind of laughing at this comment about the jerk, remember, gang, you were the jerks that the ladies were talking about. Okay? Now, and I've actually used this example on a number of occasions, and on at least 2 occasions, people have actually shouted out from the audience, I married the jerk. But again, though, you see, that's a little example of something that did happen to me. I listened to it. I remembered it. I've played it back to you. And a phrase like I marry the jerk, if you take it out of context, means nothing. But when you put in the context here of something about humor, it works. Listen, pay attention, write it down, record it. It will help you to create really good material. The next element of the LAUGH acronym, and I will show examples of this later on, is the Googler, as I refer to it, okay? And if you can get into the habit of Googling on the Bing, as I like to refer to it as, you will be able to find a rich source of material that will help you to add humor to your presentation. Now, I'm not suggesting that you plagiarize, but you can take a lot of material that is in the public domain. You can take quotes from Mark Twain, from Will Rogers, from Oscar Wilde, etc., from a gazillion other people that will be appropriate for your material. And when you drop 1 or 2 of those into your presentation, you are going to have your audience smiling. When you've got your audience smiling, you've got the endorphins swimming around in the brain. Everyone is happy, and they're going to say to you afterwards, hey, that was a really good speech, and you made me laugh as well. And when you get that kind of a reaction, you are on the winning side. The final element of the LAUGH acronym, and we'll also illustrate this shortly, is this is something that can be really powerful for you at Toastmasters meetings. Quite likely in the last, well, let's go pre-COVID, okay, so when you were all gathering together, you might often have made a speech where you got 1 or 2 little giggles or titters from your audience. And effectively I refer to them as the he. They are the nuggets for you to be able to expand humor. So if you pay attention to the little he's you get from your audience when you're making a comment, ask yourself, how can I go from he, which is the kind of little seed, and fertilize it to make it a ho. And it can be done by you just working around the phrasing a little bit. And the only way you're going to be able to work around the phrasing a little bit is if you go back to the first point, which is listen, and pay attention to what reaction you got, record, and then say to yourself, all right, how can I add a little bit of extra humor to that comment that I made, which I may have just made in passing? Because this is one of the points that I think people make a mistake on. If you're going for the humorous speech competition, I'm going to say something that might sound daft now. don't start off by trying to write a humorous speech. What? I said, don't start off by trying to write a humorous speech. Sorry about that there, but the interference there from the group here. But my basic point here is that write your speech and then add humor to it. Write your speech by taking some of the tips, tricks, and techniques I'll be talking about here, but that will help to put a smile on people's face. But if you start trying to write humor straight away, think about this. Stephen Colbert has a writing room of about 17 or 18 people. Jimmy Kimmel has a writing room of 17 or 18 people. That's 17 or 18 people putting their brains together to come up with maybe 15 minutes of funny material each night. You haven't got a writing team of 15, 17 people. What you have, though, is that you've got life experiences, some of them that are uncomfortable, some of them that people laughed at you when you mentioned them. And if you pay attention to those, you will be able to make things happen. So the acronym is listen, anecdote, uncomfortable, Google on the Bing, and he to ho, ho, ho. Now, I will show you a little story I tell in a couple of seconds' time to illustrate some of these things, and then we will do a kind of a forensic audit on the story that I will be showing you. But before we do that, though, I'm just wondering, is there any questions on what we have covered so far? Marlon, any comments or questions from anyone?
There's nothing in the chat yet. If you have a question, be sure to put it in the chat. I'll be happy to convey it.
Okay, all right, thank you. Now, what I'm going to do here now, Toasties, is I'm going to show you a speech or a little story that I tell during a lot of my presentations. I speak a lot to associations, corporations to improve people, performance, and productivity with a smile. And in doing that, what I try to do is I try to bring a lot of humor into the presentation.
I want to be annoyed. I want to be upset.
So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you a little clip of a story that I tell. I have prefaced the story as part of my keynote on the gift of gab. Gab is an acronym for goals, attitude, behavior. And in this piece here, I'm talking about having the right attitude, especially when you need to have the right attitude. So what we'll do here is I'll play the clip. I just want to set it up for you. Bear with me. Sound is on. Okay, we got it. Okay. In this clip, I've told a story about the importance of choosing your attitude. I've said to the audience, the question you should ask yourself when things go wrong is, what do I want my attitude to be? So let's have a look at how this will work. If you can give me the nod.
When you ask yourself the question, what do I want my attitude to be, you're more likely to say, I don't want to be angry, I don't want to be annoyed about this. And having answered that way, you will make some effort not to be angry and not to be frustrated. And I'll give you an example where it helped me a couple of years ago. I was driving in the western suburbs of Chicago in heavy rush hour traffic. Came to a set of traffic lights, turned left at the traffic lights, and a few seconds after turning left, I noticed in my rear view mirror a mobile discotheque. Cop car, flashing lights. So I pulled to the slower lane, he pulled to the slower lane. And I remember saying to myself, well, Holy St. Patrick and St. Bridget. Bit of respect there, please. Holy St. Patrick and St. Bridget, what could that fine officer of the law want from an upstanding citizen like me? Now, that was the gist of what I was thinking. I may have said just one four-letter word, but for those of you whose mind is in the gutter, the word was oops. Which, as you all know, stands for uh-oh, police, stop. Right. So I pulled into a little small parking lot at the side of the road, and as I was pulling in, I said to myself, now, why does he want to speak to me? And the only reason I could figure why he might want to speak to me was when I had turned left at the traffic lights. They were slightly red. But not by a whole lot now, mind you. So he is there on his computer checking me to see if, in my case, I'm a member of the Irish Republican Army. Or even worse, a Cubs fan. Go White Sox! I have to tell you, depending on who I'm speaking to, I obviously try and put in a kind of an answer to that gets a reaction. But when I was speaking up near the Green Bay area a couple of years ago, I made the comment that the cop was checking to see if I was a member of the Irish Republican Army, or worse, a Packers fan. I didn't think I would get out of that room alive. So he was there checking my computer to see what my record was like. And I asked myself the question that I said you should ask when things go wrong. So I asked myself the question, what do I want my attitude to be? And I said there's no point in being antsy and annoyed about this. He probably doesn't understand the concept of slightly red lights. So in my side mirror, I see him walking up towards me. And this being Chicagoland area, I prayed that he had an Irish name. I prayed that he had this vision of Ireland, that the roads are still unpaved, that milk is brought to the creamery via donkey and cart, and that traffic lights, if they exist at all, are, well, basically advisory. I look up. Officer Schmidt. Who proceeded to tell me in minute detail what I had done wrong. He asked for my license, and he asked for my insurance. Now, none of this is made up, I promise you. I had asked myself the question, what do I want my attitude to be? As he is looking at my license, he says to me, "Sir, I like your attitude." I'm thinking, woohoo, I'm getting away with this. Then he looks at my insurance and he says, "Sir, your insurance certificate is out of date." My wife normally looks after that, officer. He smiled. I think he realized he was dealing with one more administratively incompetent husband. Ladies, you know the story, I'm sure. And he just handed back the insurance certificate to me, and he said, "Look, take it easy on that one." Now, I should tell you that this event happened on the 16th of March. Okay? One day before St. Patrick's Day. So the rest of the conversation went as follows. We're having great, good fun, and as you will see, it continued that way. So the rest of the conversation went, "How much will this cost me, officer?" He said, "I'll cite you for the red light. I'll leave you go on the insurance. That'll cost you $75, sir." $75? Do you know how many pints of Guinness I can get tomorrow for $75? The guy cracked up laughing. I think he thought I was on crystal meth. And he said to me, "Sir, if I was to cite you for the red light and the lack of insurance, this would be significantly more expensive. You'd have to go to a traffic court." So I said, "Thank you, I appreciate the break you're giving me." I pull into a very small parking lot with only one access and egress, so I had to turn the car around and drive by Officer Schmidt. As I drove by Officer Schmidt, I kid you not, he waved to me with a genuine smile. That was how the conversation had gone. And I said, "This is crazy. This guy's waving to me with a genuine smile, and he's after fining me $75. And I waved back to him with a genuine smile, saying, "This is really crazy." He's fined me $75 and I'm waving back to him. But what Officer Schmidt, though, would not have known was that for only $75, I had got a really memorable anecdote about the importance of asking yourself a really powerful question when things go wrong. And when things go wrong, and they will for every single person in this room at some stage, the question to ask yourself is, what do I want my attitude to be? It's a powerful question. If you get stuck in a traffic jam on the 88 this afternoon or 3:55 or going home and there's nothing you can do about it, ask yourself the question, what do I want my attitude?
Okay, my friends and toasties. Now you can see that story there. Well, I want to ask you a question for a start. Do you think that incident actually happened?
Yes.
Yeah, all right, okay, it did happen. The only thing that was not really accurate in that is I cannot remember, I did remember one stage the name of the officer, but what I did was that I was building the officer up to be of Irish heritage. And what I wanted to do was to create a real kind of a contrast then. So instead of the guy being Murphy O'Flanagan or Flanagan Murphy, I come up with Officer Schmidt. And what happens is then you got a really good reaction from the audience. And that's one of the real issues related to humor. If you can get into the habit of finding ways to put surprising contrasts into your program, you will actually get a really good reaction from your audience and help you to laugh. Now, what I will try and do here now in the short period is let's review that story and let's review it in relation to the LAUGH acronym. And I think that will help you to actually be able to develop your own ideas and thoughts as well. So the first thing, we were talking about the LAUGH acronym. I won't necessarily go through them in the exact order right now, but the core element of the LAUGH acronym is anecdote. And that obviously was an anecdote. Now, why did I start telling that story? I think the reason why I started telling that story was that I came home to my darling bride after that incident happened, looking for sympathy and support. And did I get it? No. See, ye women are all the same, Mary Hart. You and we us men suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune is what we do. Now, I've actually got another story in relation, an extended one about the conversation I had with my wife at the kitchen table on that time, because she actually had given me the insurance certificate, and of course I didn't put it in the car. But point there is that I told her the story. I think I repeated back the story to her about what happened, and she laughed. I told a few other people about it a few days afterwards, and I remember them laughing about it. And I'm thinking, hey, Conor, pay attention to your own rules. Listen, you've got an anecdote there that's got real potential. But more than that, though, I've got an anecdote that's got a really powerful message about choosing your attitude. And if you can tie a really powerful message in with some humor or something that puts a smile on people's face, it's going to make a much bigger impact. The other point about that story, by the way, is, and it's powerful, I know, for a number of reasons. I could ask you a question right now, and let's assume that you're out driving in the next 24 hours. Do you think you will actually see a mobile discotheque at the side of the road chatting to someone? Almost certainly, yes. All right. The way I actually drive this message through to audiences, I say, the next time you see a mobile discotheque, and you probably will tomorrow, hopefully it won't be behind you, you will actually say to yourself, hey, the Irish guy, that story, what do I want my attitude to be? And you should be thinking, that person should be asking themselves the question, what do I want my attitude to be? And the day after, you're going to see a mobile discotheque, and you'll be talking about what do I want my attitude to be as well. And I know from experience that people actually start bringing that question then into the workplace as well. That story works because it's true. I was uncomfortable initially. As you can imagine, I didn't really say, oops, when he stopped me initially, but you can figure out what the word might be. So let's do a quick audit on and review that story. So I want to talk about listen, anecdote, uncomfortable, Google and the Bing. All right. So a few things about it. I saw that in my driving, my rear view mirror, the cop, and I said to myself, well, holy St. Patrick and St. Bridget. You don't believe me? Marilyn, you don't believe this Irish guy? The pain of it. All right. Of course I didn't say that. So basically, though, what I'm doing there is that if you actually go for drastic understatement at times, it can actually create real humor. All right. So there's a few other examples I'll be able to give later on this, but try and find some ways to exaggerate your reaction in either over the top or actually an understated way. You're going to get some good reaction to that. Another element of that story is I said, I led you into saying that I came up with one 4-letter word, and all of you people with filthy minds down in Phoenix were taught something else. Now, when I mentioned Chicago, everyone says immediately, oops. So, but down in Phoenix, no, of course, you come up with something else. Point here is that, again, that is kind of a total difference to what you're expecting. It's contrast and surprise. Also, what it is, and this does work at times, is that I try to create acronyms. I use the acronyms a lot to get my message out. But if you can come up with a funny acronym or an appropriate acronym, it can also work. I mean, we're talking about an acronym right here now, LAUGH, which you will remember. You may not remember exactly each of the 5 elements of listen, anecdote, uncomfortable, Google, and he to ho, but you will remember laugh. You will remember that there's probably some half-decent content in it, and then you'll think back and try and figure out what the 5 elements of it were. So then another element of that story, I referenced that the slightly red lights. Again, it's understating maybe, it's stating the absolute obvious. And I think you will often find that when you're watching movies or when you laugh at something your friends say, it's because they stated the absolute obvious. And when you do that, if you find ways to introduce that into your speeches, it will help to add some humor to the presentation as well. Right, here we go, gang. I was speaking to a large group in Chicago for this, and I said the cop was checking to see if I was a member of the Irish Republican Army, or even worse, a Cubs fan. And of course, we got a reaction from the audience, because a lot of the audience are very, very sad people, not very kind of well-developed, and they're Cubs fans. So, I mean, what could I do? It was actually to a healthcare group. So the idea here is to play with the audience. And I do this with my groups a lot. So I mentioned the Packers example when I was up in Green Bay, and I said the cop was checking to see if I was a member of the Irish Republican Army, or even worse, a Packers fan. I then made the comment that I was lucky to get out of that room alive. Now, here's the thing. Oops, hold on a second. Get out of that room alive. Here's the thing. One of the biggest laughs, if you go back over that speech, is I mentioned the Packers, and I then said I was lucky to get out of that room alive. That single sentence gets one of the biggest laughs in the whole story. Now, the reason why I'm emphasizing that is that if you take that sentence on its own, I was lucky to get out of that room alive, doesn't mean anything. I threw it out once as a quip during my speeches. The crowd laughed at it because in the context of what I was talking about, it worked really well. I listened, remembered what had worked, and now I drop it into every single speech. Now, for those of you who are thinking that the playing with the audience is difficult, I wouldn't make any effort at all to play with the audience down there in Phoenix, although I will actually show something about a headline that I did pick up today. But I mean, that's not playing with the audience. This is something that appeared on USA Today, my friends, and I'm only reporting it, so I can't do anything. Okay, all right. But again, that's an example of playing with the audience. So what I do for each of the events that I am presenting at, the G in laugh is Google and the Bing. What I will do is I'll Google and the Bing and figure out what are the sports teams in most of the major cities. All right, I know most of them. If there's some humorous anecdote about a sports team, I'll try and drop that in. If the sports team is absolutely hopeless, I'll definitely drop it in, and I pretend sympathize with the audience. But the basic point is that I am playing with the audience. And if you can play with the audience and not do it in an offensive manner, you're going to get really, really good reaction. Now, one of the points about, there's the Packers, okay, playing with the audience. Get out of there alive. We've covered that point. Right. The other thing about this is that the mobile discotheque is one of my signature stories. And it is powerful, and people come up to me years afterwards and they say, I remember your stories about the mobile discotheque. And often when I see a cop car, I think about what do I want my attitude to be. But what I keep doing, though, is that I keep improving the story, or at least I think I keep improving the story. So, for instance, and this kind of developed over a period of time as well, what actually happened on the day, which doesn't appear in that story, but I've now added it to it. What actually happened on the day was I was at this side of the traffic lights. A cop car was on the other side of the traffic lights. And you're saying, oh, Conor, why did you go through the red light? He was driving an unmarked police car. which is totally unfair, gang. Okay, isn't it? It absolutely is, yeah. Now, here's the thing, gang. If the cop had been driving a marked police car, I obviously would not have gone through the red light. So, ergo, unmarked police cars, Toastmasters, actually encourage lawless behavior. Right? Address your local police chief with that going forward. Now, that's a goofball piece about the story, but it actually is an element that I've added to it. And it's true, but I hadn't put it in originally, but I just keep trying to improve it. Another example about trying to improve the story, and this is actually a change in the story. I said when the cop was, I told the cop, do you know how many pints of Guinness I'll get? The cop looked at me and I think he thought I was in crystal meth. That gets a really strong laugh. I have taken it out of the speech in almost all cases. The reason why I've taken it out of the speech is because I know a lot of communities in the United States have suffered dreadfully from crystal meth. And I just kind of feel it's a bit of a cheap joke, especially depending on where I am presenting. I now throw in a line like, I think the cop thought I was smoking something. Now, it doesn't get as funny a reaction as the crystal meth one, but it's one I'm a lot more comfortable with. But what I'm doing, though, and I encourage you to do, is that when you have got the basis of a good humorous speech, keep working on it. Just one word, one phrase, two phrases can make a difference to help you to add additional humor to the presentation. Now, have we got any questions at the moment, Marilyn Bennett, from anyone?
There is one question from Tony Velez. He asks, does the humor have to relate directly to the anecdote?
I would say that it is much more preferable to do it. And I will finish up with a short little anecdote that you'll see how I've actually taken the story and added my own kind of personal twist to it. Tony, it definitely will make a much more impact if you can bring your own little message and adapt it a little bit. And I think you can do that if you pay a bit of attention to it. Is there some way that I can intersperse my industry? So if you're telling a story about, I don't know, lawyers or something like that, okay? But you're an engineer, maybe just change it to engineers or whatever engineers, whoever engineers joke about, that kind of thing. But take a story, your own story, or take a humorous anecdote that you have written about and adapt it. And the more you can do that, the more you will get a good reaction from the audience. I hope that answers the question. Right, let's continue. The other thing about, this is really important and useful, I think. One of the things that good humorous speeches consist of, I think, is self-depreciation. Self-deprecation, okay? And by that, I mean that if you laugh at yourself, the audience will laugh with you, not at you. If you just make fun of someone who is at a lower level than you or someone who's vulnerable, you're going to come across as being cheap and nasty. But the more you can laugh at yourself, the better. In the stories that I tell, I often tell stories about myself and my darling wife. And at the end of it, the real idiot in the story is this guy here. And if my wife was watching now, she would say, well, that's no surprise. Okay. All right. But so, for instance, in that story about the cop, when I made those comments, and the cop was probably thinking, I hear another administratively incompetent husband, talking about myself. I refer to another version of the story. I refer to myself as a dumb Irish paddy. Okay, find ways to self-deprecate yourself, to laugh at yourself, and you will really get the audience on your side. Okay, if we don't have any other questions, we can continue on. Any other questions from anyone, Marilyn?
Not at this time.
Okay, all right. Okay, so here's the point, gang. To get better at adding humor to your presentation, I think the most important decision you can do is decide to do it. if you're if you've got a humor speech competition at the upcoming district, I don't know whether at your district, I don't know whether you actually do or not this year. It is going to be very difficult for you to write a humor speech that will win the competition in the 4 to 6 weeks. However, if you actually decide that I'm going to win the humor speech competition in 2022, and if over the next 12 months, you just keep a track of some of the humor, the fun, the mirth that you have heard or created around you, you will be able to find some little nuggets in that repository of humor that you can bring to your speech that will help you to add humor to your presentation. The other thing is, and this is the kind of paradox of the humor speech competition. Let's say you win the club competition for humor. All right. So the next week you come back to the club and you try and improve your humorous speech. The problem is you're telling basically the same story as you told last week that people had heard, and you're expecting people to laugh at it. It's not going to happen. Even the best comics in the world aren't going to have people laughing at the same material, night after night. So what I'm encouraging you to do is to just pay attention to the odd time you get that piece of laughter in January or in March or in May, and then you can drop it in at some stage as well. If you want to test out your material for a humorous speech competition, try and go to another club or another area to do it, because then you'll have people hearing it fresh for the first time. That's kind of one of the paradoxes of this humorous speech competition rehearsals that people get involved in, I think. Now, so I'm asking you to decide and work at it. Now, let's have a look here at a couple of things that, right, deciding and work at it. One of the things that I do is, well, I do work at it. One of the things I do to work at it is that when I see something that puts a smile on my face, or a piece of copy that puts a smile on my face, I try and record it. Just last Friday, I was down in a town about 50 miles south of Chicago. I was walking along the street and I saw this. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm not sure that I really want to actually do business with this company, okay? Because I have this worry like that they might actually encourage me to pay back using, I don't know, sledgehammer or something like that. That is actually a sign from, well, you've got the company there. Two Rivers Mortgage is the name of the company. But I was walking by, I saw it, just took a photograph of it, didn't know when I was going to be able to use it. I'm using it here tonight. Okay. Now, another example of something I saw about 4 or 5 weeks ago. This is a van that was in front of me, Nova backflow. And you think, oh, why are you showing that for, Conor? But if you see on the left-hand side of the van, I'll give you a close-up of it here. It is actually, I think that might be from the Adams family or something like that. Family since the last time we argued at Grandma's house, okay? Now, here's the thing. I want to keep referencing this here. I'm not asking you to create new material. Just decide you're going to do something to add humor to your presentation. And when you decide to do it and use some of the tools, tips, and techniques we're talking about here, you capture that material and you will be able to just take a little nugget here, a little nugget there, and drop it in. But if you decide you want to write your own humorous material, I wish you well on that. Now, I'm not saying that you just copy everything you see, but this is the way to actually develop some good humorous material. Let's have a look at a few other things I really think can help every one of you. I know most of you absolutely love PowerPoint presentations. You get up every morning and say, I'm going to see another PowerPoint presentation today. Yabby dabba doo. This is brilliant. Okay. Right. Good. Some of them are sponsored by insomnia companies, I think probably. Okay. In fact, I tell you, one of the things, I do quite a bit of presentations to healthcare groups, and all these healthcare groups, nurses, practitioners, professional healthcare people, etc., they've got to do these continuing ed programs. And these people have to attend continuing ed programs that are designed to bore them to death. Absolutely. But it's interesting, though. One of them I saw about a year and a half ago, a physician who have understood the, I think, importance of a humor, he put up just a bone on a slide for the audience. And he said, this is a humorous slide. He'd put up the humorous bone. Okay. Everyone in the audience knew it because they were medical people, all right? But the way he played on it, and he just dropped in 3 or 4 other little humorous slides in a 45-minute or 50-minute presentation that kept the audience awake. I mean, I saw one presentation by a brain surgeon on one occasion, and I tell you what, I wanted to have a lobotomy halfway through it. I mean, it was just that kind of dull and boring, etc. But no, so where are you going to get good humor? One of the simplest things you can do, I'll show you some examples now, is get onto the Googler and Google on the Bing for funny newspaper headlines. Funny newspaper headlines. When you Google on the Bing for funny newspaper headlines, you will get things like, this is an actual headline. Okay? Now, Tony made the comment earlier, does the humor have to relate to the audience, or ask that kind of a question? So if you're doing a presentation here on maybe education of the US population, or you're doing a presentation on how people can get the message wrong or something like that, you could possibly use this. But I'm sure there's other ways you can think about doing it as well. Other numerous funny headlines are, okay, I mean, you don't have to be too brilliant to realize that there are some problems with that newspaper headline. Another one is, I mean, to me, this is an earth-shattering headline, to be honest with you. And what did I do here? And you can do exactly the same thing. I Google on the Bing for funny newspaper headlines. You could get more specific and you could say something like funny newspaper headlines related to engineering, related to lawyers, accounting, physicians, whatever it is. You probably come up with something as well. Or you can take some of these headlines and you'll be able to figure out how to adapt them. Other examples are, okay, so I mean, just one little incorrect piece of grammar there, and we've got the poor grandparents. Well, they were nice folks, ma and grandpa and grandpa. Yeah, okay. And then I love this one. Okay, I mean, this is an example here, I think, of absolutely stating the obvious. And you'd wonder whether or not the editor or the sub-editor actually knew what they were writing when they put this down, and they were just kind of saying, oh, I need to get some excitement in my life, all right? And this one here. Okay, all right. So for you, simple tip that you can do when you're preparing your next speech or doing a PowerPoint presentation, get onto the Googler, funny newspaper headlines or funny references to whatever industry that you're in. Another thing that you can actually do is you can start look at them about fluttering. What? Fluttering. Oh, it's Twitter. Sorry. Okay. Twitter is what I meant there, gang. Okay. Mea culpa there. All right. I'm going to give you, what I do is I capture a lot of the tweets that put a smile on my face or that make me laugh. And I just put them into another little deposit box or in my iPhone kind of thing, if I can put it that way. So let's have a quick example about this situation here. And the basic point again, gang, is capture the humorous material. You never know when you're going to use it, but you will actually have material and the ammunition to use when you need to use it. We'll be finishing up very, very shortly now. So this is David Crosby of Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young. Okay, if smoking marijuana causes short-term memory loss, what does smoking marijuana do? Now, I thought that was actually funny, and I see you're laughing there at it, but the response from someone else, though, actually kind of summarizes almost everything that I'm talking about here tonight. So, let's see now, hopefully the next one. Yeah, all right. So this is the response to the David Crosby one. It was weird when I smoked pot with a buddy and we both started laughing riotously. And then when done laughing, I asked him, what were we just laughing at? And he says, I can't remember. And don't you remember? And I say, no. Kind of makes me wish I tape recorded the conversation. That is what you need to do, gang. I regularly think of something funny. Let's say when I'm driving the car, I'm saying I got to remember that in a couple of minutes' time. By the time the couple of minutes is gone, I've forgotten about it, okay? So you've got to get into the habit of recording it when you remember it, when it actually happens, and you will have a really good source of information at the end of it all. Just one or two other ones on Twitter. Now, for the ladies and the women here on this call, bear with me now for a second. I am very, very careful not to offend my audience, or at least if I offend them, I'm a mutual offender, okay? So I just saw the dumbest commercial, why would a married man buy a hearing aid? And I'm sure those who are in happy marriages would probably appreciate the humor in that. However, one of the funniest people on Twitter, and if you're on the Flutter, I would suggest you follow Sarcastic Mommy. Send my husband to the store and then turn off my phone because it's time to teach independence. And she comes up with these wonderful lines where she basically is saying that us men are total idiots. And I'm sure all the women here, Marilyn, you're laughing too much at that. I don't like this. Okay. All right. But the basic point here, though, is that what I'm doing here is that I'm showing you where you can get the humorous material, but also what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to make a balance, because if I just came out with jokes about wives consistently in this, it's going to turn off my audience. But I could probably come up with jokes just about husbands, all right, and it wouldn't turn off my audience, and all the women in the room would be going, yeah, he's right, you're idiots. Anyway, but that's it. So if you're following on Twitter, follow Sarcastic Mommy. She is so funny. So I'm going to finish up with a little short story. But before we do that, I'm conscious of time. Before we do that, has anyone got any questions they want to ask?
We do have a few questions. One that was related to something you just referred to from Bobby. Do you have some method of organizing the tidbits that you find, or a recommendation?
Do you know, no, this is me. I don't. Because what I find is that I just drop them into my Apple Notes, and I consistently kind of flick through them. And what it means is I'm kind of coming up with spontaneous kind of ideas. If I'm looking for a particular term, I'll do a search in my Apple Notes, all right, and I'll come up with that word then. But I've deliberately decided not to try and itemize them, because you never know what is going to work in what kind of a place. But it's a good question to ask. And whatever you feel comfortable with. If you're a left-brained person who wants to be analytical and disciplined, go right ahead and do it.
Thank you. And then Connie asks, or makes the statement that she really likes dark humor, but what do you do when the story or anecdote fails or falls flat and the audience is just not getting the reference? How do you recover?
It takes practice. I do come up with something like, well, I'll tell you a joke in a few minutes' time, or I'll tell you something funny in a few minutes' time. But this is a real challenge, and you can only work on this through experience. Kevin O'Connor, who's on this call, and I, as I said, we do the Speaker Academy in Chicago here for the NSA Illinois chapter. And I think both of us consistently say that the best experience that you can have as a speaker is where you bomb or where you fail, because that is where it will actually help you to get better, and you'll appreciate what is how to improve yourself. It can be hard at the time, but if you that's why you need to kind of be able to work your material slowly. If you try and write a very humorous speech, or write your humorous speech, never practice it, practice it maybe, but never put it in front of people, and then you go in front of people and you think, I thought that was funny, they're not laughing. I thought that was funny, he's not laughing. It can really kind of depress you, okay? So just keep working on it. If you think if you get a he, work on it. Hope that answers that question.
Thank you. And then Jared Forte asked, can this technique of incorporating humor also add value to international table topics and tall tales contests?
I gotta say, we don't have tall tales here in Chicago, but at a few district conferences I've spoken, I've seen some tall tales, and my Lord, they are so funny. So yeah, I mean, the tall tales, obviously, these techniques will work. Tall tales, to me, one of the core elements is exaggeration. The more you can exaggerate in a relevant manner, the more you're going to be able to get good humor there. But these kind of techniques, I think, work for any time, any place where you want to add humor to your presentation. One of the things I would say to you also is that never tell someone, I'm going to tell you a funny story. Tell the story, and if it's funny, then you can build on it. Never tell someone, I'm going to tell you a funny joke, etc. Now, by the way, I'm not going to tell you a funny story, okay, as I finish up, all right? No, I'm not. This is not a funny story. This is not a funny joke, but there's a lesson to it. It'll take about 2 minutes, and hopefully we're okay on time. If we need to finish this recording, we can do it. I'm happy to stay around afterwards. But I want to tell you about Patrick. Patrick, and there's a moral to this story that each of you can learn from. Patrick was a good living Irishman who ran into some financial difficulties due to gambling, womanizing, and drinking. So as you can see, the Irish definition of good living is pretty broad. Okay. Patrick's granddad dies, and Patrick went out to the granddad's house to clear out the house. Then he went out to the garage and he started clearing out the garage, and he brushes it against a lamp. And out of the lamp pops no, not a genie, gang, a leprechaun. Okay? A leprechaun. Get with the program. The leprechaun says, Patrick, I'll give you one wish. And Patrick says, well, leprechaun, I thought you guys gave us 3 wishes. And leprechaun says, hey, COVID, man, cutbacks everywhere, all right? So leprechaun says, I'll give you 1 wish. Patrick says, leprechaun, if you let me win the lottery, I'll pay off all of my debts, I'll give a significant amount of charity, and also make a major contribution to District 3 Toastmasters. So the leprechaun says, hey, I like that, Patrick, you've got a good spirit, good attitude, good behavior. I'll let you win the lottery. 1 week goes by, no lottery win. 2 weeks go by, no lottery win. And after week 3 and no lottery win, Patrick goes out to the garage again. He brushes against the lamp, and Toastmasters of District 3, what pops out of the lamp? That's right, a leprechaun, a learning audience. This is very, very good. The leprechaun says, Patrick, what can I do for you now? To which Patrick responds, leprechaun, you told me I'd win the lottery, and I haven't. And the leprechaun says, Patrick, give me some help here. At least buy a lottery ticket. Now, a few things about that story. That is an old story that I heard back in Ireland years ago. At that stage, when I heard the story, Patrick, the person wasn't even named Patrick, and the person was actually praying to God. Okay, so what I did was I adapted that story when I came over here to the United States, to bring more of an Irish flair to it, given my background. So it was Patrick was the name of the person, a leprechaun rather than a genie comes into it. Okay, so I took an old story and adapted it, and that's what you can do as well. Find a story that you enjoy. Can you adapt it? The other thing about this, again, now, this is what I really try to work on in all my material. I try to leave people with lessons, and the lesson here, and I can use this story for every single presentation I do, whether I'm speaking to oncologists, whether I'm speaking to salespeople or marketing or leaders or Toastmasters. The moral is that just because you want something to happen doesn't mean it's going to happen. Just because you want to write a humorous speech does not mean it's going to happen. What you've got to do is you've got to take the metaphorical lottery ticket, and in this case, I would suggest it's the elements I've spoken about, the laugh acronym, etc., and they're looking at for humorous newspaper headlines, etc. Take those, work on them consistently, and that, Toastmasters, is your metaphorical lottery ticket. And when you've got that, you will achieve your goal to add humor to your presentation. Toastmasters of District 3, it's been an absolute pleasure to Zoom with you this evening. And if there's anything I can do going forward, please contact me, and I'd be more than happy to address your future. Stay safe, stay well during these very challenging times. Thank you. Conor Cunneen, Irishman Speaks.